hi.
Ahoy, hi.
He sounds really cool.
Yeah, him a good boy. Him a good boy.
Oh my god, welcome to the Sleepy Podcast.
We're fucked up today. Jay's sleepy. I'm sick.
I don't know
I'm
where.
stressed as usual.
Oh, who isn't stressed in this economy?
You
Relaxation
Yes.
in this economy. Jesus
For
Christ,
real.
what are you doing? Fucking Valium to get it? Ugh.
Seriously, in this economy?
It's like my go-to phrase. Like, hey, you know, we should go grocery shopping today. In this economy? Oh.
I think it's time that we learn how to starve.
That's the only option that seems to be left.
Bring back foraging 2023.
I'm down. Actually, our friend Jim is going to be
Hashtag don't bring
teaching.
back foraging.
My friend Jim is going to be teaching like a wild crafting class up at the Gray School of Wizardry up in like Whitehall, New York. I think that's at.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be teaching a class up there. I'm like, damn, I'm kind of jealous. I wish I had the means to get up there for that kind of class, but that's a hike.
Deadass, you want to know why I don't support what I just said?
What, like foraging for food and stuff?
Yeah, you know why?
Why?
Motherfuckers don't do it responsibly.
Oh no, people
You
will
ever
just
hear-
take everything. They'll just
Yeah.
all these carrots. Let me just take them all.
So you remember how, like it's been said, hey, white people, please stop going out and harvesting sage. You're killing it off, right? And
Right.
a lot of people were like, oh my god, the audacity! It's a plant. How could you do this to us? And it's like, hey y'all, I don't know if you recognize this or not, but when you harvest the plant, you fucking kill it. You just
Right.
cut it at its base and you leave it to fucking die. When we harvest the plant, we take what we need and we don't take enough to fuck the plant up so it can actually grow and produce more for other people. And if we do take it, we dig its roots up and put it in a different location where it's going to be better off. Holy shit. You actually treat something with respect and it'll be different. But like, yeah, people don't fucking reasonably forage from environments. That's why we have to have hunting and fishing licenses, right? Because you'll get some prick who'll be like, oh, look at how good I can do. And he'll catch like 50 fish out of the fucking river and completely deplete the population and cause a collapse because he did it in fucking spawning season, right? Like shit like
Yeah,
that.
like sometimes
Dumbass.
we watch that show Life Below Zero. Like about these people that live in Alaska, like in the remote areas of Alaska and shit. And like I think for for the fishing season, a lot of people used fishing wheels for the longest time. Like the people who lived out there, and they had to ban that because there's just not they were taking too much fish because
Yeah,
of the fishing
like
wheels.
the thing is, like there's a thing in native culture called the dish with one spoon agreement, which like is an understanding that like, hey, we all eat off of these lands, you need to have sustainable practices and you don't overhunt, you don't overharvest, and like if an area is starting to get depleted, guess what, you can move to a different area, right?
Mhm.
So like, I don't know, I feel like I'm not against people foraging or feeding themselves at all, right? But the context in which people know how to do it sustainably has greatly depleted in our modern time with
We've
Western
lost
society.
a lot of knowledge. We've lost a lot of knowledge because of our modern comforts that we have. You know what I mean?
I will say this, I don't think the knowledge is actually lost at all because I spent a lot of time out in the fucking woods myself. For all the people who've been living in cities, there's people who never left the woods the whole goddamn time, right? Like I meet people in my hometown who look at me like I'm a witch because I live in fucking Toronto and work in films, and they're like, "Oh, that fucking Hollywood girl," you know?
Mm.
And like
Like you're a witch?
their family, yes,
Like.
I know. But like for real, there's a lot of people who like literally never came down out of the mountains to live in society, and the knowledge truly has sustained out there, otherwise they would have passed on, right? So I think it's lost in like a modern urban context for a lot of people who live in big cities, but I don't think it's like dead and gone, if you know what I mean.
Not totally. Yeah, it's definitely alive in, like you said, like in like less urban areas. I can only speak to an urban kind of experience because that's like all I have. But like I noticed it, like even like when we're camping and stuff, I'm like, wow, you know, like I have no idea what's out here, like in these woods. I don't know what all of these plants are. I don't know what I could eat, what I couldn't eat, what's poisonous, what's not. I really don't know any of that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I also like put a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, well, now you have to learn. And then you have to learn everything. You should learn how to sew, and you should learn how to do this, you should learn how to do that, and you should just like learn all these things and just be this perfect human specimen because the end is coming.
Well, I'll say this. I think we stumbled onto a topic today because
Mm.
in random synchronicity, I bought some pemmican off of the internet when it was advertised to me on Facebook. Do y'all
What's
know what
that?
pemmican is?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's a traditional Métis food, which is like it's like cured meat.
Mm.
I'm probably going to get the description wrong because I've never made pemmican or seen it made. I've only heard it described, so forgive me if I butcher this. But they smash up the meat really well and they add like berries and rendered fat, I want to say, to it so that it's preserved and it has really good flavor. And essentially what you get is a really long strip of meat with like berries and nuts and other stuff attached to it. It's like extremely next level high quality fruit jerky or fruit leather, but with like air quotations jerky in the middle. But I don't want to call it jerky because that's kind of a reduction because jerky is something different, right? But yeah, it's a very traditional meat because back in the day, how people would often preserve stuff is you'd make it into pemmican or you'd make dried meat with it, which is also what I bought. Dried meat's very similar to jerky, except jerky's often in strips and kind of tough. Dried meat is cut really thin so that you can chew it and it's kind of crunchy. And it's a little bit smaller. So it kind of, from what I've seen, because I haven't had it yet, it hasn't arrived, it kind of looks like buffalo meat chips, if I'm being honest. So I'm very interested to try out the dry meat when it arrives, and I'm super excited for the pemmican because everybody says it's the cat's ass, and there's really good berries in the prairies. Good rhyme. That I don't know if y'all have down there. They're called Saskatoon berries.
No, it doesn't sound familiar.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
So Saskatoon berries are a berry that might kind of look poisonous if you didn't know how to identify it because it's not a segmented berry and it's kind of smaller, right? Like it's in the bracket of, yeah, this could potentially be poisonous, right? But when you taste it and you identify it correctly, it's really sweet, even though there is like a slight tart to it. It's not bitter. And if you're really talking about like Canadian prairie delicacies, y'all need to fucking try some Saskatoon berry jam. And it's called Saskatoon berry after the region it's found in, which is near the city Saskatoon and like the northern more Saskatchewan region. I'm not an expert on the plant, but I think that the reason it's not in the States, and really don't quote me on this, is likely due to it needing some kind of cold. That's my best guess. So yeah, I got like Saskatoon berry flavored pemmican coming in, and it's like a super fucking traditional form of food. And I don't know if y'all have ever had like bison before, but like
Yeah, I've had like a
fuck,
bison
it's good.
burger before.
Yeah,
I think
it's
I've had
like
also
I've said this on the podcast
bison
before.
jerky.
It's like literally what they're trying to make beef taste like is like what bison tastes like naturally. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bison is pretty good. It's very rich, very rich meat. It has like
They're
so
really
much flavor in it.
beautiful, the Saskatoon berries.
Yeah.
I'm
So it's
looking
cool
at
that
them, they're
like
pretty.
ooh,
So they
but
are
it's cool that y'all are
very.
into. Sorry, go
They're
ahead.
no, I'm so sorry. They're native to your area. Mostly Canada. Pretty much, it's not really
Not
here
really
in
down
the
here.
U.S.
Yeah, they probably
actually.
need a lot more like colder climate to
That's my
thrive.
guess.
Probably, yeah.
And we don't get them in the mountains, and I don't know if we have them in Ontario, right? It's like one of those weird things about North America. Y'all who live on the East Coast, there's cicadas down in the States, right?
Yeah,
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did you know in Canada, there's only cicadas in the east? And I couldn't fucking tell you why. My best guess, again, prairie's too inhospitable because it gets to like -40, -50 out there. But if you live in BC, like mountained pine forests, there's no fucking cicadas, right? And anytime somebody moves from BC and they come out to Ontario for the first time in the summer, they're like, what the fuck is that noise? And my mom did it too. Actually, no, she came in winter, so no, she didn't.
Sounds
But
like
it's literally like
rattles
the
in the
trees.
trees. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I won't annoy people with it, but yeah. So there's little shit like that. Like you won't get cicadas in the west of Canada like you will in East Canada, but they're kind of everywhere in the States from what I understand. Is that correct, or is that just kind of like a misunderstanding?
I mean, we're in Philly, so East Coast. We have them in the. It's a summertime thing, like a late summer thing,
Yep.
usually.
Yep.
Definitely down south, they have a lot of
They're
cicadas,
everywhere down
but they
south.
are,
Yeah.
but they are pretty much
Chunky
everywhere.
boys.
Yeah. I'm curious.
I actually.
I
Can
think
you
they
guys-
like
sorry.
the muggy heat. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
No, I'm messing around with my sensitivity because for some reason my mic keeps picking up Jay, and
I don't
I'm
know
like
why. Like, I'm not
halfway
even
across the
talking that
house from
loud.
him. But if
That's
I turn the
weird.
sensitivity down, then I don't get picked up, and I'm like,
No, I can
I'm
hear
trying
you.
not to yell, blow out the audio, and it's just, no,
Yeah.
but I was just gonna say, no, I have a very traumatic experience actually surrounding cicadas because at the tender age of like 6 or 7, while I was playing Power Rangers with my best friend, one nested in my hair and
Ugh.
got stuck. So that
Ah!
buzzing, that screeching, that
Oof.
noise, yes,
That
that will
noise.
forever be burned into my brain. And they literally had to cut my hair to get the cicada out of it.
Unpleasant.
Rough. Yeah.
No.
Ugh. Yeah.
I
Enjoy
do
that,
find it cool
everybody.
though that we like kind of naturally veered onto like back to nature / like foraging immediately on the episode right
Mm.
after I had bought some pemmican because I only bought that shit like yesterday, right? It hasn't even arrived.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've been just like, I just don't want to be in a damn city. I don't want to be. I just don't want to. I don't want to. I don't know. That's my mood today. My mood today is I don't fucking want to. Whatever it is, I don't
So
want to do it.
I notice that when I'm in the city, I feel the same way, right? But hear me out.
It's
Have you
overstimulating.
have you spent an extended period of time in a small town?
In a small
Yeah.
town, no.
I assure you it's not better.
Yeah, I would imagine
Um,
like it's not great, you know.
yeah, as a trans queer woman who typically dates people of the same gender, I can't really live my life in a small town. There's not a lot of other like trans people or queer people. When I was
No.
there, I matched with somebody, and the nearest queer person I matched with was 2 fucking cities over in an hour and a half drive away. Now, to be absolutely fucking fair, that hour and a half drive to go see that person would actually be shorter than the amount of time it would take me to transit to my last ex-girlfriend's place, and she lived in fucking Toronto, right?
Right.
So like it's different beast, right? Because you know how slow city driving is and all that.
Oh
But
yeah.
like there's a distinct lack thereof in a small town, right? And that's okay. That's actually one of the best things about it because you're going to have time to like address yourself. Maybe things are so slowed down that you don't have ADHD shit getting thrown in front of you constantly and you can like sit down and read a book. Another thing that will constantly blow your mind for about the first week is how fucking quiet it is. You'll just be
Yeah.
like, I can't believe it's so quiet. I can't hear anything.
That's
No
how it is like when
hum,
we go
no
camping.
background noise. Yeah.
Like
So
when we
like
can get away from the city.
mhm.
I almost can't sleep though.
It's good at pardon?
It's like almost too quiet for me. Like I need some sort of noise, some sort of white noise, kind of, to sleep sometimes.
You know why I think that is actually?
Probably because I grew up in a loud ass city. I just got
Yes
Sounds like
and
used
we're
to
no.
it.
traumatized by the
Yes,
city.
yes and no. So this actually goes back to nature. It's a genetic predisposition that very often people notice. I don't even know if it's a genetic predisposition, but it's like an evolutionary trait. If shit goes silent, we get uncomfortable for a reason because that traditionally has always been the sign of a predator
Of a
in the
predator,
forest.
yeah, of something big
Yes.
being around. Because you
So
even see that in like
so
Jurassic Park movies. Once things get really quiet, they're like, "Oh shit, there's gonna be a big dinosaur behind me."
yes. So actually being in an environment that's too quiet kicks up a like a panic response for that exact reason. It's your limbic system saying, "Hey, there's signs that potentially something more dangerous or of an equivalent dangerous level to me is in the area,
Mm.
I should be really fucking careful, right? So that's why
That
I
makes
personally
sense.
think sometimes it's really like we can sleep in an area that's kind of loudish if it's like a lowish background noise because we
Yeah.
know those are our people. They know we're going to be taken care of. Imagine if everybody at a loud party suddenly went silent, right?
Oh
It's
no,
like
like the
when you're
hairs would be standing up on the back of your neck. Like if all of a
exactly.
sudden it was like it just was like a party and then it was quiet, it'd be like, oh god, who died, or who's gonna die?
Or have you ever been sleeping in a car? Because yes, you have, and you wake up because the car starts to slow down and you're like, what's happening? Right?
Mm.
It's a natural human response that when you've fallen asleep and you've adjusted to your environment, changes in the environment disturb us from our sleep because that is a time where we are supremely vulnerable, right?
Mm.
So not being able to sleep because it's too quiet absolutely makes sense from like an evolutionary standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it means that all the threats are potentially there and none of your safety nets are.
Yeah, because like even in the summer, like at night, like even if you're like out in the woods, like there's crickets usually, or
Mhm.
you hear like some kind of chirping, or even the cicadas, like we were talking
Frogs.
about earlier, or frogs, and you can hear all that, and
Mhm.
like and that's a good amount of background noise. Like I don't know, but all at the same time though, sometimes I feel really overstimulated by noise, so it's like it's a balance that I'm trying to kind
Mhm.
of figure out. It's like I have noise canceling headphones, but I don't want to use them because then I can't hear
Mhm.
anything around me, and so I just get really paranoid about everything. Um,
Um,
mm.
Another thing too with small towns is and like the middle of nowhere, the noise level will differ greatly based
Mm.
on the season, right? So winter
Yeah,
is so much quieter, right? Like
same in
there's
the city
noises,
too. Yeah,
but
blankets,
there isn't like
everything.
all the birds chirping. Snow actually does act as a sound dampener, so it doesn't reverberate off of mountains as much if they're snow coated, unless it's like fucking ice sheet. Then of course it'll reverb off of it. Probably harder than fucking rock, actually.
Have you
Um,
up in your area, have you been having a normal winter, like the winter that you should be having?
Define normal.
Like, are the temperatures normally like are they cold like they should be? Are you getting snow like the
Ish.
typical amount of snow that you
So
would?
I'll say this. Toronto has always had a really like ever since I moved here, it's always been like a little bit snowy one day, and then maybe it's like warming up the next, and then it's snowy, and it's
Mm,
like it doesn't know because if you look at Toronto, it's physically the southmost city in Canada, right?
yeah.
Like nothing's further south than it. Now you go to my hometown, right? I went there for Christmas this year. I actually said while I was there, Grand Forks be carrying on like climate change doesn't fucking exist. Cuz like the snowdrift there was up to my hip and it was minus fucking 27 degrees Celsius in the daytime when
Is
we
that
had our
typical?
cold snap. Um, yeah,
Like it's not uncommon
typically
for it to be like
typically when
that.
I was growing up, winters in my hometown range anywhere on based off of the severity and the weather pressure systems because it's in the mountains, somewhere between minus 10 or minus 5 degrees if it's mild to minus 30 if it's getting fucking cold. So
Right.
minus 27 in the daytime is exactly par for the course, and it's actually more on the cold end of things without being too extreme. So as far as Toronto goes, I don't fucking know because it's always been inconsistent for as long as I've been here. But my hometown dead ass was carrying on like fucking climate change wasn't a thing, even though
Mm.
it is.
It's just really strange because my team that I have at work, like the team that I work with my job, three of us are in Philly and three of us are in Texas. So we're like evenly split. In Philly, like we're supposed to have snow in the winter time. We're supposed to have snow. It's supposed to be, I don't know, probably like between 20 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit at the most. We can have colder days. It's normal. We have not been having that. It's been 50 degrees, 60 degrees. We got like a dusting of snow. It's hot. It's like I'll be sweating. Like if I go outside, like even today, I don't even know what the high is today, but like if I went outside today, it's just like if I started like doing something like maybe picking up trash on the block or like go for a walk, like I would start to sweat like it was like springtime. Like it feels like spring is like right around the corner. And like I know like technically it is, but like we haven't had winter at all. And that's been something that's been weighing like really heavily on my mind. And I just been thinking
Interesting.
about like yeah, and like I was saying, like so the people I work with in Texas, they have gotten slammed with snow after snow after snow in fucking Texas. It doesn't snow in Texas. It shouldn't snow in Texas. They're not equipped for it, and so I felt really bad for them, you know, because they're really getting fucked down there because they're just not equipped for it.
My friend, my friend Anthony lives in Texas. He was without power for like 4 days,
Right,
like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
right, and they don't have like gas heat. It's just like all electric, and their power grid is awful. You know, it's just not a good situation. And like, but then I think about here, I'm like, but we are equipped for snow, and we're supposed to be getting snow, and we're not getting snow. And just the fact that like that's happening, and like that's
Everything's backwards.
right, and it's just like how I don't know how people. I don't know how we can't at least come together on the climate change thing and be like, we have to really do something about how we're living on this planet.
We
We're not
technically
living
are.
sustainably.
It's mostly corporations inserting propaganda for the sake of protecting their own profits.
Yeah.
Most
Right.
people actually are really on the you notice how few people have actually argued climate change with you in person versus on the internet. Okay.
Right.
Do you know
Yeah.
what astroturfing is?
AstroTurf. I've heard of it only in terms of
It's
like
a
football
somehow
fields.
legal thing that fucking corporations can do where they're allowed to make fake accounts online to position themselves as people who agree with their points. So companies have astroturfed neighborhoods into fucking fracking and shit just by claiming that members of the community support it to muddle the waters, when in actuality, the severe fucking majority of people you meet in day-to-day life are talking about the horrors of climate change, aren't they? How many in-person climate change deniers do you know?
None really that I know personally. None.
Do we even
I
Yeah.
have
know
proof?
Oh,
Do
you
we
know
even
one?
have proof that any of those
Oh yeah.
motherfuckers
anecdotal.
online are not astroturfed? Really?
Right. Fuck. Well, that makes me more mad. Makes me
Yeah,
more mad
as it
than I was
should.
before. I just
But you're mad at the right people. You know
yeah,
what I
like
mean?
I'm just mad. I'm just mad. I'm just fucking mad. We all have to live on this planet, and generations and generations and generations after us have to live here.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck can't we just? We only get one. We get one space rock to live on. Okay, because we have not figured out how to navigate space. All right, not in a way that's meaningful or whatever. Like we don't have space
So
colonies right now. So
I'm actually
figure it the fuck
sorry, go
out. We
ahead.
need to save the goddamn planet.
I'm
Pissing
going
me
to
off.
quote my friend Gwillem here. Hi Gwillem, if you're listening, even though you probably aren't, this is from you. We were talking about how different things in the planet are kind of like the planet's organs, right?
Hmm.
And I likened us to brain cells because I'm like, oh, then we're kind of like brain cells because we can, or like white blood cells, because if we get out of balance, we fuck everything up.
Mm-hmm.
But also we're capable of balancing things and producing rational thought, right? And then he's like, I have a different idea. I say we're the gonads. And for those who don't know, gonads is a clinical or academic term for the reproductive organs. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, think about it. If you get one human onto a planet that doesn't have life like we have it now, it doesn't even matter if you live or die. The bacteria and all of the things in you is enough to start an entire fucking ecosystem. So they were saying that because we're the gonads, we're essentially putting our planet through a horribly painful puberty right now.
Hmm.
And the downside is even if one of us is flung onto another rock and our planet dies off in capability for producing human life, because we know we're not going to be able to kill off the planet entirely unless we fucking destroy it with bombs,
Right,
right?
like the rock itself will live. The space rock will live.
Yes.
Humans will die.
And I wouldn't even call it a rock because that
Yeah.
would imply that there wouldn't be life here without us, which there
Right, yeah.
absolutely will, right? So he has a really good point in the fact that like a planet developing a species that is intelligent and capable of interstellar travel, even though flawed, is kind of how reproductive organs work. Because in nature, often reproduction, the animal has to be coerced into it by like hormonal drive or like social what's the word I'm looking for? Like customs or
Yeah.
acceptance, you know? So like animals, it's in their interest to reproduce so that the species can keep going, and there have to be biological things to make them interested in continuing their species, right? So it's kind of the same thing with humans, right? Even though
Yeah.
we're fucking reckless about it, we will think about how many people are baby mamas, you know what I mean? And how many people got kids but aren't with their partner. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's
Mm.
just straight up like we don't always think things through and we procreate, right? And that's kind of what the fucking sex organs of the earth would do, in my opinion.
Mm.
And this is me adding a lot to what he said. He basically just said that like we're the gonads and we just
Yeah.
need to fling one person onto another planet. But like thinking about it, it really does look like puberty. We're causing problems. We're digging into the earth. We're bringing up all this oil all over the surface, you know, causing eruptions. It's like fucking acne and shit, right? We're fundamentally heating up the planet. We're changing the structure of everything. If we do succeed in surviving and like mitigating climate change, then we've essentially completed a puberty cycle and can then leave the planet to go start life on other planets that might not have it otherwise.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. It's just hard
Like
to look at the
that's
human experience and not view it as like really negatively right now, because it's like, okay, why do we deserve it if we're just gonna sit here and just keep fucking up the planet and
I think we
that
do.
we have? You know, like, do we deserve to go on? But like, I also think like I don't know if people really care about the survival of the species. At least like not many modern humans right now. Like they only care about the production of products and wealth and money and stuff. You know, like it's something completely not real. Like I just think of how many products are created and just like how many
But
of the same product I see produced by all like different manufacturers, and it's just all they want to do is just create more stuff and more shit and make more money. And it's like, okay, you have all this money, but then like then what? But we have natural disasters at the fucking wazoo and the whole planet's going to shit.
truth be told, I don't think people actually even want to do that so much as they have to, right? Like most people really don't give a shit about being super good at corporation or whatever. What it really comes down to is they don't want to starve and die, and they want to have like levels of comfort, right? So essentially everything that's reasonable and what we should expect in like expect in a society is held hostage away from us and then ransomed back to us through like indentured servitude that we think we have a choice on, but ultimately if your choice is to die or to comply, that's not freedom, right?
Right.
Freedom entails the ability to walk away. So ultimately well, I think one of the big problems is that humanity really needs to understand how much a small minority of people have held the severe majority hostage with threats of violence and coercion since the dawn of fucking time, right? Like, if you think
Yeah.
about it, police are just a fucking occupying army,
Yeah.
and laws are just measures of violence that they're willing to take against people if they don't agree with whatever code they have injected socially, right? So sometimes the social code may be something entirely reasonable, like don't fucking murder people, right? Pretty reasonable
Right.
on like most situations. But then sometimes the law is explicitly, and I'd say in fact more cases it's used explicitly just to keep people down and to levy the majority of violence, right? So how states work is they have the majority of violence, right? They have the monopoly on it. When a state loses the monopoly on violence in their own country, they cease to be able to hold control, right? And this is what's happening when like riots are breaking out and people are willing to enact violence upon people who have been controlling them, right? So when you get down to it, our entire society is still a bunch of rich fucks holding everybody else at gunpoint and bomb point and say, do it the way we want to do it or you die. And for as
And that's
much
what
as
I'm
we've
really
evolved and
fucking
we've
tired of.
grown, we need to get the fuck over that. And I'm sorry, I'm not advocating for violence, but
I don't know what else.
Unconditional love does not overcome a gun in your face.
No.
It never has, and it never will.
Mm-mm.
And I'll leave it at that.
That's where like that's where I'm at. Like I'm just feeling very, very tired and like exasperated, like almost like hopeless maybe sometimes, because like why are we just gonna keep running this track and then there's these rich fucking motherfuckers just decide everything? Like this whole, like Rue's been following it more than I have with the Norfolk Southern derailment, these train derailments that keep happening.
As a
I-
former railroader, let me just speak up and say how fucked this entire situation is. Like,
Because the union was calling it out for ages.
ages. The screams have been so loud, and Mr. fucking Railroad himself isn't doing shit.
Yeah, Biden is
He
like
wants to
huge into the
proclaim from the
railroad.
He wants to proclaim how he's the friend of the union, he's the friend of the laborer, and you ain't doing shit. There have been 3 toxic derailments in the past week. The first one that we all know of that's literally affecting my family in Erie, the other one which happened in Texas, and a third that just happened close to Detroit. All of these have happened on Norfolk Southern Rail. Meanwhile, the CEO of Norfolk Southern brought in an $11 million salary last year, and the company overall made $2 billion in profits.
Why does the leader of this company who does fuck all, why does any CEO who does fuck all in a company require that much money as a salary?
Because we
What do
haven't
you
guillotined
do?
them yet. No, it's not a matter of what do they do
We
to
haven't
deserve. Like I
eaten them.
said, the whole thing is them holding us at gunpoint. The whole reason it hasn't happened is because the other shoe hasn't dropped yet. And believe you me, it will. Everybody's like, what's it gonna take? What's it gonna take?
What is it?
Approximately
I don't
1
know.
week, the population's starving. You
Yeah.
mark my words. You starve for 1 week, you get desperate, you will watch people literally willing to do anything to feed their kids.
But that
right?
also
So
opens up the
Go ahead.
potential for it to get even worse. You know, because then you
Sure.
have some other powerful group, organization, whatever,
I
step
disagree with
in.
that. So actually, that's another propaganda talking point by
Mm.
people who are in power that they recite to make people think like revolution is a pointless endeavor. It's the narrative that, oh, but the people who are in are just as bad as the people who were. And that's almost never demonstrably the case, right? Like, if that was the case, then like democratically elected governments like Augustus, Pinochet, you know what he did in fucking Chile? I can't remember who he did it to, but like there was a democratically elected leader, and the states didn't like him being there, so they put in Augustus Pinochet. They did a military coup. This guy peacefully refused to leave his office, like his parliament building, and they fired like fucking missiles into the building and killed every one of his supporters in that building. And then they took people who like supported him, like artists and guitarists, and took them and like publicly smashed their hands in front of everybody just to break the spirit
When
of their
was
people.
this?
Look up CIA Chile 1980.
1980,
I'm not sure
okay.
1980 is the year, but it's talked about in the Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, which is a book that is about covering what's called disaster capitalism, which is where a lot of these people who run the world and exploit other people literally look for and create disasters so that it creates a vacuum so they can be the people who sweep in and do it. So literally the motherfuckers who
exhausting.
create vacuums to like so they can sweep in and take power are the same people who tell people that if a power vacuum happens, something worse is going to come in, because something worse has already come in, right? If we're at the state where it's this bad, I challenge you, what would worse look like?
Well, I guess rounding us up. That would
Sure,
be worse.
right?
That's probably the worst.
Could they round us up? if we're willing to fight back and kick them out in the first place.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like, I don't know, like, numbers wise. You know what I mean? Like, I suppose, yeah, like, we do outnumber like any National Guard or military. You know, like, the people, of course, outnumber if you got every civilian. But the problem is, in America, there's this whole splotch of red in the middle of the fucking country with all this surface area and all this space, and all these motherfuckers hate the motherfuckers on each side of them. And so I feel like if we even tried, they would all just rise up and continue to squash everybody down, and they would just join the side of the capitalists and just be like, hey, fuck you. We enjoy our imprisonment. We love being tortured. We love capitalism. We love being abused, and we're going to help keep it in place. I really think that's what would happen.
I know where you're coming from with that, but like, I don't know. Historically speaking, like, empires that have these kinds of practices, they just don't ever last, right? Like, Rome is fucking gone.
Fuck Rome.
Name one empire that
Is
did
it,
any of
though?
this shit. Yes.
Is it,
it's not.
though?
Yes,
But like the
because
remnants of it still exist.
Sure, but that's not Rome itself, right? What we
No.
have now could be called a pseudo-modern Roman state, but it's not Rome, right? It's
No.
a different beast, and it's definitely evolved in what it does. But
Definitely a beast, that's for sure.
I subscribe to reckless hope, the unwillingness to let my spirit be beaten down even in the face of overwhelming odds, because it is the only thing that really does anything in this world, you know? Because if I've said this before on the podcast, if it was hopeless, they wouldn't need to make propaganda.
Right. I try to hold on to that.
We can always win. And like, just saying, y'all, we have magic. Like, fucking, we've had people on this podcast dead ass talking about how to like curse the people who fucked you up in your life and make them get what they deserve. To quote, what's her name? S.J. Tucker, what we boil in our cauldrons can call down the sky. So, you know, we do absolutely have the power to do it. And I think ultimately that's why magical organizations and stuff like that frightens the government so much, and why they often watch those groups, right? Like, they were watching Israel Regardie and the Satanist Temple way back in the day, right? Like, they had fucking CIA guys trailing the dude. I'm sure they pay attention to modern occult groups in a similar way, because if you think about it, if you have people, even if you don't think they're able to do it, if these people are convinced that they're able to do magic and to cause people at a distance to suffer negative results as a consequence of that, you mean to tell me you're not going to pay attention to those people and monitor them to see what they're capable of?
Right. True.
So, just saying.
I guess I spend a lot of time thinking on, like, I know that change doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, that's saying it doesn't, like, you're not gonna wake up tomorrow and then you're just gonna like snap your fingers and there's gonna be enough food for everyone and we're gonna have this, like, you know, socialism.
There is enough
awesome
food for everyone.
Well, yeah, there is enough food, but it will be distributed evenly. Like, you're not just gonna wake up tomorrow and the world's gonna be just and fair, right? So like, that's just not gonna happen. But like, I just get really stuck on, like, I'm like, how do you set up the building blocks and ensure that the progress still keeps going, like that the work still keeps happening, you know?
Bit by bit, and it's happening as we speak, you know?
It feels like, I was looking at this map of like how states have voted in the past years and stuff, and like each year it's just like more red, more red, more red. And I just don't understand why these people want to just make other people miserable. Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm just so tired. I don't get it. Why do you want to dictate how I live my life? Why does it fucking matter? I pay my taxes, I go to work, I do my job. Why do you feel the need to control every aspect of my fucking life? Do I not do enough for you?
If it helps, those people are statistically dying off. Like, the amount of
fucking
Republican
hope so.
red voters dying from COVID.
Fast enough.
No, actually, it will be fast enough because it's actually starting to happen, and it will be in the next 10 years, according to the things that I was hearing from
Really?
people. Seriously, if you look at it, my parents are like the youngest boomers possible, right? My mom's like 65, right? I hate to break it to anybody who's of that age. I love y'all. But that's when health problems start rearing their fucking heads, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the rate of mortality between the age of 65 to 75 to 85, it exponentially leaps in every category, right? So the old baby boomers are fucking old at this point, right? And even the young baby boomers are getting up there. So, like, it's a statistical inevitability, right? In my opinion, the only thing that we can do is hold the fucking line as hard and as strong as we can. And that's why I am militantly hopeful and I do not ever back down on these conversations, right? Because if we lose hope, we lose period. Because when we give up hope, we give up teaching, we give up fighting, we give up any fucking chance we already have. And if we're going to get through this, if anything that we do matters and we want to pass something on to the next generations, it will be done through hope and even radical love, you know, the kind that sometimes even asks us to sacrifice and suffer so that others might not have to in the future. And there's going to be a lot of people out there who have done no ill to other people in their lives who are going to have to make great sacrifices to make this world keep going in a good way, you know. But I don't think it's impossible, and I don't think that we should back down from the challenge ever, you know, because ultimately it's our only fucking hope. And I would always rather die with a sneer on my face, a knife in my hand, and my boots on than quietly in bed with a gun to my head.
Yeah. I feel that, 100%. And it's funny that you that you mentioned what was it? You said something about how we stopped teaching, and it just made me laugh and think of Rousseau, I think on Twitter, like someone was trying to pass a bill that would get rid of the Department of Education.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
My first
We love you, Bobert. Go ahead, girl.
My response immediately was, well, does that cancel my student loans? Like, if there's no Department of Education,
Sweet.
There's no one to pay back. So fuck it.
That's a really fucking good question, actually. But as we all know, essentially you're kept like cattle. That's why you're given a loan that you're not allowed to be able to actually pay back, and therefore they wouldn't allow you
We're
to
already owned
default
by
on
the
it.
government.
Because if you were allowed to get out of your student loans in any reasonable way, you could default on it and go bankrupt like you could with any other loan in the world. But it's
don't.
not, because it's designed to be a chain around you indefinitely to hold you back as a generation. Not
And it's
so
apparent,
that you can get
and it
anything
worked.
else.
It worked. They got a whole generation of people, hook, line, and sinker, to go to college and further their education and blow a lot of smoke up a lot of people's asses. And now we got a lot of
can't
debt.
fly
I can't
anymore.
afford a house, and here I am. You got
You want to
me.
know the best part, though? You want to know the real good part? Those people forgot that in 10 years, they're going to be shitting themselves and unable to take care of themselves. And who are they going to have to rely on? Oh, that's right, us. And what programs are they going to need? Oh, that's right, every fucking social security net they cut. Just saying.
The only concern, yes, they are dying off. But I know a staggeringly large population of generations below us, Gen Z, Gen Alphas, who are turning out Republican, even if they're gay. As soon as they make money, you become Republican, you become conservative. Doesn't matter if you're gay, doesn't matter if you're trans, doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're anything. If you become rich, you become conservative. And
that's not necessarily true. But I see why you say it is.
It is, like,
because
any generalization is not true, of course, but it is very, very glaring.
I've actually looked into this as well, and a lot of people who are young queer Republicans are going through what's called. Have you heard of pick me minorities?
Oh, yeah, they yeah,
Yeah.
I think I know
It's
what you mean.
exactly what it
Yeah.
is. It's exactly what it is. It's people who are traumatized, who either grew up in a society that forced them to be something that they weren't, you know. So like pretend that they were straight, go to church, be told that gays are a sin and all of this, and they then get to the point where they'd have to reconcile their identity with everybody they've ever had in their community their entire life, which includes their churches, their social circles, and their families.
I
Most
don't
people will experience a cognitive dissonance so strong that they're not able to overcome it and will simply try to incorporate the aspects of themselves that they're able to while towing the line as much as possible. And it's an it's a very negative thing that happens because of like fundamentalist groups and like how people put people into echo chambers. That's why like in really extreme like fundamentalist households, they don't allow people access to the internet, right?
No, yeah.
Because then they could
Mhm.
find other people who reflect them in a reasonable way and give them another route. But like a lot of these people have actually been just so deeply abused into being a way that they actually think there's no other way to do it at this point. And it's not that they're willingly wanting to become it, it's that they've been traumatized into thinking that's all they have, and they're not willing to part ways with all of their family and all the people they've ever known simply for whatever benefits they would get for living life differently. You know what I mean?
I
It's not
do
always a cost that people are willing to pay.
I do think that might be true for some people like that, you know, like young gay Republicans, as I guess we'll call them. I'm thinking of the song lyric from, can't think of the band, Third Eye Blind. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Young gay Republican. Okay. Um, I think about that, but I also think that like people do it for the attention, for the clout. It's cool to be conservative right now. You're getting a lot of attention. The more you talk about your guns and your God and Trump, the more attention that you get. And I saw this of all things. I know like Jeffree Star, right? Very controversial person for many reasons within the queer community.
It's shit.
I know like in the beginning, you know, in the beginning of his career, it was like a lot of centered around racism and things like that. But I saw an interesting clip from a podcast. I don't know, he did some podcast interview, and it was the weirdest disconnect I've ever seen. Because like, I will say this about Jeffree Star. Jeffree Star has always been very queer. You know what I mean? Like even when Shane Dawson did that little documentary series that was popular for a while, like Jeffree says like, oh, you know, you could call me she, he, it doesn't matter, like all pronouns are fine for me. And I was like, well, that's kind of neat. That's like a cool kind of like representation of what non-binary really is, or gender fluid, or however you want to define it. But anyway, there was this podcast clip that I saw of him, and then he was dressed in like a white, almost like a turtleneck kind of looking shirt. He looked like a Karen. It was the weirdest fucking thing. He had this like bob, like very Karen looking wig on. His makeup wasn't as like as dramatic as Jeffree Star's makeup usually is. It looked very much like a Karen. It was the weirdest thing. And he was like, he was saying something like, yeah, like these they them people, you know, that's ridiculous. Like how could you even like that's not even real. Ha ha ha. You know, look up the actual clip for his exact quote. You know, I'm paraphrasing.
Singular they is older than specific gendered pronouns. Just saying.
Yeah. And then he went on to like what the fuck was it? Basically just like laugh about it. And then but he said, as a conservative, and then he went on to go whatever talk about his point. I was like, as a conservative, you are Jeffree fucking Star. You are the gayest of the gay. Like so many young queer people look at you like you are a gay god. You know what I mean? Like you are what people
Worship
aspire.
the ground he walks on.
Many people do, because like especially if they don't know about like all the other shit, all they see is this like very successful queer looking person that has built this like successful life for themselves, and they're like, damn, wow, like he must be great, blah blah. As a conservative, are you serious?
He's having lunch with Caitlyn Jenner.
Are you serious?
Woof.
Wait, what? Really? Is that a real
I
thing?
have no idea. I just made that up, but I can only guess.
We're a tabloid now.
Shit.
Careful, we might get sued for slander.
Right.
Oh, baby, bring it on.
You know what? Let's have Jeffrey on the show, and I'd be like, Jeffrey,
Now
why?
we get hit with the slap suit. Jesus Christ. And
And so-
Jay's gonna be like, hey Brew, remember when you said bring it on? Well, we got hit with the slap suit. So now we have to go talk to John Oliver and ask what he did to get through this.
I would just like, I don't know. I would love to sit down with Jeffree Star and be
That's why
like,
we-
why did you
That's why
betray
we
us?
got the LLC. It would hit the LLC. It wouldn't hit us.
That is another thing. I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm not a lawyer. I do not have a law degree. I worked as a paralegal for a little bit less than a year, and it was for an ambulance chasing company, okay? So,
Rand's beard. The man ran.
right.
You got to
Man ran.
pass for that, Rand.
So that's my disclaimer, my preference. But there is a thing in law called legal fiction, okay? I'm going to do my best to kind of like my own thoughts on this, but like, so legal fiction. So the reason why, like, okay, so a company can buy property and you wouldn't think like, how does that make any sense? You know, like it's not a real person. It's just this entity. Like, and so
Technically,
like,
they actually are defined as a legal person since
Right.
it was
They're a
added
hu-
to
yeah,
law.
they're-
because of the concept of legal fiction, and so that like
Yeah.
all kind of ties into that. Like basically like we've created these concepts that businesses are entities and this and that. So like I'm thinking of these companies that are doing these like Norfolk Southern, like you should be in there, people should be imprisoned for what is happening. Truly you are putting people's lives in danger. You have committed heinous acts against humans, against innocent people. You should be in jail. But instead they just got slapped with $1.5 million fine. The company.
You know,
Oh,
I'll
no.
say this as well. When I was young, like really young, like Catholic, I always thought no true loving God could make a hell to confine people to eternal damnation. And I agree on one small stipulation with the word eternal. Yes, I don't think anybody should be eternally tormented. Do I, as a grown-ass adult, think hell absolutely should exist? And if I was creator, would personally go and make it real after having been on this fucking planet? You bet your ass I do.
That's kind of
It's like-
like in the show Lucifer, that's sort of like toward the end of the show, spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, but toward the end of the show, that is kind of what Lucifer realizes what hell's function is. So like in the beginning, he thinks that God just placed him in hell, you know, as punishment to him. Like as punishment, you get to deal with all the sinners, and you know you have to torture them and punish them and blah blah blah. And he was like, well, I like to party and I like to have fun, and I'm actually not I'm not a bad guy. I just, you know, I don't want to do this. But toward the end of the series, what he realizes is that when people are put in hell, it's a hell of their own making. So it's their own hell loop. Whatever the thing was that tortured them so much in life, they relive that over and over and over and over again. And the idea behind your hell loop is to overcome it. Like you're supposed to work through whatever that is.
So then what if we were bad people in past lives and we're stuck on a hell loop now, and this is actually it because we were doing the same shit that those people were doing in another life, and we're here as karmic repercussion? Dun dun dun!
That hurts my brain. It makes me sad. But he kind of
Just
realizes, like in the show, like toward the end of the show, that he's kind of like Hell's therapist, and it's kind of funny because like in the show he's seeing a therapist, and you know that's kind of like the joke here. But like the fact that like he kind of
Inspired to
becomes
be her.
yes, Dr. Linda.
Same.
I mean, I feel like if you survive being a therapist to the actual devil, I mean, you're fine. I feel like she's got a one-way ticket to heaven, you know, at that point.
Well, yeah.
If she made it to hell, the devil would be like, I ain't gonna torture you.
Right. But it's just cool because like at the end of the series, he realized like hell is kind of like you're supposed to work through your trauma, work through the thing that is torturing you so much that you can get to heaven, so that you can have that like eternal rest for your
Peace.
spirit kind of thing, and you can have peace. And I like
And
that
that I agree
concept.
with.
Mhm.
That seems a lot more responsive than reactive, and It seems like exactly what I think that process should be. I think the goal should be to reintegrate. I think that the goal should. I wish that we would. I have this theory that a lot of social problems that we face now are at this point in history a socio-psychological issue.
Mm,
And I think a lot of people don't like to look at it that way because they think that somehow looking at it that way takes away accountability or responsibility.
mm,
And I, as somebody who's in therapy, as somebody who has hurt other people due to my own stuff and have to work through all that, I completely disagree with that sort of take on what I just said. I think that more so it creates more accountability. I think that these bigotries and these sort of isms, they've become almost how do I put this? They create maladjusted behavior. They
Mm-hmm.
cause overreactivity. They cause outbursts of anger. These are things that we have diagnoses for and psychology. And I'm wondering if we started to look at it from a socio-psychological perspective, if we could actually find a way to start to deprogram. Um, because, I mean, granted, of course, once again, as sociologists said in early 2017, 2018, after the Trump election, sociologists became very interested in all the phenomena that was occurring. And
mm,
they said that the reason why that, a lot of the time people on the left, whatever sphere you existed under, we used to go at the right and say, well, you're all unintelligent, you're all uneducated. But then, of course, that fell through when it became, doctors, lawyers,
mm-hmm,
scientists, and the thing is that it has nothing to do with intelligence. This has everything to do with personal belief
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and our worldview. So it has nothing to do with how intelligent someone is or isn't. Um,
Right,
that's why
and they want to
huh?
impose their worldview on everyone else,
Right, because it's all
whereas
they
other
know.
people just want everyone to experience life the way they need to.
Right. There's a name for that. I forget what that's called, but
It's
essentially
called being a
when
dick.
something is essentially when that's all you know,
Right.
when that's what you truly believe to be the only way forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's you're going to defend that. And again, I'm not trying to create like let's feel bad for them, but the same reason why my therapist and other friends of my therapist have made us humanize our abusers, not
Mm-hmm.
forgive, but to
Right.
humanize. You can't we can't what we're doing, all of this, I know this is going to stand in contradiction to some of the belief of others, and everyone's allowed to have their opinion. That's fine, but I don't see it working. I don't like this isn't a dystopian fantasy. We're not going to go to war. There's not going to be a civil war. It's not going to actually happen.
Mm,
It's reactive. It's silly. It generally is for me on both ends the mark of people that are just not adjusted well emotionally.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who isn't adjusted well emotionally, I can say that because I'm in therapy, working on learning to be responsive, not reactive.
mm,
And I truly believe, as a progressive abolitionist on a philosophical level, that the way forward is by leaning into science and progress, but also entering this with some level of sort of approach with compassion first and
mm,
then pull the gun. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
pulling the weapon should be the last resort,
mm,
not. And we're by no means at our wits' end.
mm,
I know it seems like that, but there are so many avenues that we're just fighting to be able to actually access. And when I say we, I mean
Mm-hmm.
like professional activist groups, professional organizations, people who are doing the real work on the ground in a professional setting. Um, those are the people that are actually the movers and shakers. And as sad as it is, it's not to say that communities aren't powerful, but we need to put our power behind them,
mm.
and
Right,
because
like
that's
you
how
need to
work gets
put
done,
yeah, you
right?
need to put your power behind the people that are in
Have the
positions
power
trying to,
to
yeah.
yes,
And I don't
And
think we know who they are. But like, and also I think the other problem is too is like, who can you really trust?
I mean, and the thing is, there, right? Like, I mean, I can't answer that for you.
Yeah,
I
I know who I
believe
trust.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
believe, that people will show you who they are, and
yeah,
that
Mm-hmm.
I operate under the idea that it is nobler to be um deceived and to be mistrustful.
Hmm.
Someone will tell me if they are distrustful, then they will show me that they are, and then they get left behind. You understand?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I just don't entertain it, and I set up a boundary and I maintain that boundary. Now, yeah, I don't think that we're hopeless. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that we're in a place where it's scary. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not scared. Everyone is scared,
Yeah.
and that's normal. But the thing is that every time we've been here before as a species, and we have been here before many times previously,
Many times.
we, a leveling happens eventually. Something comes and something changes, and change, like you said, Jay, like all of us have said, it doesn't happen in a day, it doesn't happen in a year. It's
Gradual.
a series of processes that occurs, because as a species, we don't change like that. That's not who we are.
Mm-mm.
And that has been proven many times, both scientifically and otherwise. But yeah.
And it is interesting how much can change or get lost in between like just two
Mm-hmm.
generations.
Also, I'll say this, Scott, that was really well said, and I quite agree. Now, if we want to look at another time in history where things looked really hopeless to the point where a lot of people thought, fuck, that's probably it for our species, let's look at the bubonic plague.
Mm.
What we're going through right now is not nearly as bad as what happened with the bubonic plague.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean?
It was a shit
And
show.
yet, nobody at all has living memory of the trauma of the Black Plague anymore, even
Right.
though it is like an event so severe that people didn't even have surnames in Europe prior to it, because you could just be like, oh, that's Rick, he's John's son, and that's Rick, he's Ted's son, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they would denote people like that. You didn't necessarily have surnames for everybody, but when so many people died and it created like gaps in spaces, people basically had to hire people out from other communities to come in and fill gaps. So suddenly you'd have many Johns. So it'd be important to have like John Taylor and John Fletcher, you know,
Mm.
because very often your surname was associated with what you did, right? So
Yeah.
that's why Smith is a really fucking common last name, because guess what was a really good trade to have in a
Being a
world that
Smith.
relies on needleworking? A fucking
Mm-hmm.
Smith, right? And so that's why most Smiths aren't actually even fucking related. But in the context of the Black Death, things were so severe that people thought the world was like literally fucking ending, you know? And it didn't. And right when like we thought we were never going to be able to get over it, people discovered fucking soap. And we've had soap forever now since, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. We like Scott said, we really do come through everything, and there's always a great leveling event that happens, and it's like we as a species also kind of fucking level up afterwards, right? So like people in Europe who didn't have good hygiene practices, and I state people in Europe because like people in North America were doing sweat lodge ceremonies since like fucking time immemorial, and had to like when the church came over, they're like, these people bathe too much, we need to put an end to this. You know.
What?
um Yes, seriously. It's
Y'all
also
are
another
too
thing that the
clean.
church did with it's another thing that the church did with Norse people. They stopped people from bathing so much, right?
Yeah,
Like
they were
it,
really
it's
into
it's
cleanliness, the Nordic people,
mhm.
I believe.
So like it's dead ass a thing where power structures want to keep people impoverished, down, and dirty, right? And
Mm.
like they want
And
to take
stupid.
away people's abilities and sovereignty, right? So the church did this just
But
the way that like
why?
governments do it now. Because like I talked about earlier, every government is essentially just a force of coercion backed by a monopoly of violence, right? And it's because those people get to sit on top of their their hoard of privilege and not actually have to do stuff, right? If you really want to get fundamental to what fucks up most of the world, it's that human beings have this idea going back for millennia that if somebody doesn't want to do something, it's appropriate to coerce them to do it, be it through force or threat of force, right? And that pretty much sums up everything. It's why we have like fucking wage labor systems the way that we do, because those rich fucks want to make money, but they don't actually want to partake in labor. So therefore, they need to find somebody else who they can profit off of, right? Ultimately, humanity needs to learn to respect the sovereignty of the individual and stop expecting people to cross their own boundaries for social acceptance and whatever personhood we would deny them if they don't, right? Because we literally ship these people off to the streets to fucking starve, freeze, and die slowly if they don't conform with society and operate tasks that the ruling class want us to do, right?
Right, that's
So
like why I think like universal basic income should always, like, we should have that at this point. You know what I
and
mean?
that's why
Like, you
there's such
shouldn't have
pushback against it.
yeah.
So I don't know. As y'all can tell, I am very much like the super radical leftist who's like, keep hope. Change doesn't happen immediately. It's gradual. It's bit by bit. It's letting the ruling class slowly die off while not giving up your hopelessness and continuing to educate, or giving into hopelessness and continuing to educate the next generations, right? Because ultimately, on a long enough time scale, we win.
Right. I just I think there's a lot of issues right now with like, well, there's a lot of issues right now. What a generalization that is. There's a lot of issues right now. For me, it's like this platform that all these racist, xenophobic, whatever. Just like, okay, for there's a big news in local news. There's like a Catholic high school around like in our neighborhood. And these two girls, or three girls, I forget what it was, two of these girls spray painted another girl's face. They're all white kids, so there's three white girls.
A
So
particular color, I'm sure you can guess.
yeah, black. So spray painted this girl's face black. Did like a video, TikTok, whatever the hell it was, and they were like, "Oh, you're calling her a slave," and I'm pretty sure they used the N-word in there, and they thought it was really fucking funny. And I'm sure that their parents are fucking so proud of their kids. And it blew up, of course. It made local news and it made a big stink. The school has expelled the kids. And so, you know, good on the school's part. But again, I don't know if it was really done. I think it was just a PR move to, you know, protect the image of the school because it's a Catholic school. And I would say that the majority of the students there are white. Let's be real, they are.
So, considering that I almost had an aneurysm and crashed the car earlier when I realized I graduated from that said school, St. Hubert's, Philadelphia, 15 fucking years ago. And yeah, I can say it probably hasn't improved much in its time. While I was there, I had the cops called on me because I was the one Jewish kid that said I was going to blow up the school. So
Well,
obviously I
yeah,
had to
you
have
really
the
shouldn't
cops
be saying
called on
that.
me.
Yeah.
And there was two women of color in the entire school. And it was well known that other parents didn't appreciate that these girls were in the school and were very vocal that their daughters wouldn't receive as much of a good education if they had to share a class. Like the rampant racism in Catholic schools, I'm not fucking surprised.
Rampant racism everywhere, and that's the thing. It's like the more racist you are, like the more of a platform you're getting, and especially what Elon's done to Twitter. That algorithm, the shittier of a person you are, the more conservative, the more Trumpy, the more whatever, the more attention you're getting. That's what I'm not really liking right now. That's the shit that people are consuming in droves, and then these kids are seeing this and they're, oh, it's cool to be like that. Oh, look at all the attention. Look how many views I got. Look how many likes. And it's so harmful. It's so harmful. And why are we not past this? Why are we not past this yet? And I
How
think that's
could we
what's
be past
bothering
it?
me. I think that's just what's bothering me is like it's so apparent in our faces of how disgusting our society is and the views that we hold, right? That not to say we our entire society, but a good chunk of it, right? Why
So
is
I
it
have a
still
really good
like
response
this?
here. Because we live in a society, where
Mm.
everything's insular and you're not encouraged to interact with people outside of your demographic, right?
No.
So, for the longest time, forever, police shootings have been as bad for Black people as they always have, right? And suddenly, white people are saying, wow, there's so much police violence in America all of a sudden, as if, it
Right.
just happened overnight. When in reality, we are collectively going through a dark night of the soul as a species. We're having to grapple with our shadow of all the things that we have not necessarily been even allowed to see that take place on our planet, right?
Because it's
And
been happening
cognitive
forever.
dissonance is a hell of a fucking drug, right?
Mhm.
People are willing to do absurd things if they can't reconcile the differences in their head, right? That's why you get people doing insane shit like fucking shooting up schools or whatever, right? Like
Or spray painting
there's
people's faces, apparently.
Yeah.
exactly, right? And in the end, we are going through the process of sorting it out right now. And that's why it looks so bad, because it's always been this way. Statistically, it looks like we're more warlike than we've ever been, or sorry, it looks on the surface like we're more warlike than we've ever been. But if you go look up statistics, there's actually like less wars going on now than there ever
Yeah.
was in all of history, right?
Yeah.
So we're dealing with all the things that we've been pretending aren't there. And
Yeah.
it's a very fucking painful process. It's like clearing an infected wound. You sometimes need to get rid of flesh that's dead. Otherwise, you're going to get a cyst and get necrosis, right? It's
Mhm.
painful. It's gross. It's ugly. But realistically, how could we have gotten past it by this point? We've only
True, because we
effectively
haven't really
had
addressed it.
large scale connection for like 20 fucking years at this point, right?
Mm.
Like people weren't really connecting on the ways that they are now on the internet way back in fucking like 1995.
Mm.
But you start from like 2005 and onward, and yeah, it's like close to 20 years we've been doing this work, right? So people it are doing all of these things and trying to improve. They're trying to learn how to like even just like the push for people to go to therapy. Like I'm sure Scott can verify this. If you ever feel like life is hopeless and there's no way to succeed, I encourage you to talk to a therapist or like look at therapy videos if you can't afford therapy, because I know it's
Mhm.
prohibitively like hard to get. But like realistically, a therapist is the person who talks people down from that ledge because they have dead ass like facts, evidence, and experience to support all of it, and training, right? We're going about this process of trying to heal humanity, and fucking next to none of us have even gone through training courses on it that we call therapy, right?
Mhm.
So like it, they like that's one of the first things that a therapist will actually address. They'll be like, it sounds like there's a lot of like despair. How do you feel about that? And like they'll ask you questions to get you to think about like how we even feel about stuff and how we respond to stuff. And you really get to take your power back at some point, like
Mhm.
just even in the attitude shifts I've heard from you, Scott, you can stare into something that just seems so fucking bleak and oppressive and be like, so here's why this is happening the way it is, and
Yep.
like I'm not saying that like people who don't go to therapy don't have those capabilities,
Oh,
but like if
absolutely
we
too. Mhm.
but if we feel like we can't do anything, that's a really good time to talk to somebody, because it's very much provable that we can do stuff and that we can make differences and that we're in the process of doing it, right?
Mm.
And the world is very loud right now. And
So
it's very
loud.
easy to get caught up in all of the yelling voices, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes the most reasonable thing we can do is just have a reasonable voice on our shoulder to talk to.
I think it's just
Right.
like everything just upsets me. Like I
I feel
I
that.
can't look at
Mhm.
anything. Everything fucking upsets me. Like like, I know, like, the whole Jeffree Star thing, right? Like, I was like, man, that really sucks to like have this like queer icon, kids look up to him, and just be a piece of shit, you know. And then like another queer icon, Tadra Hall, another one that's just like going down the route of like, I'm rich, fuck you. That really bothers me, and I don't know. It just I just have this, like, every day I wake up and I'm like, what are we doing? Why? It's been I don't know. But then like I tried therapy, but I'm like such a fucking self-aware person. Like I know why I'm upset. Like I get it. I know exactly why I'm fucking upset. So like a therapist being like, "Oh, well, you know, it seems like, well, yeah, of course." You know. It's very frustrating.
That's
Especially
that's
cuz
one of
I
the hard
feel
things
this
about
need to
therapy
help.
too. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just I always feel this need to help. Like I want to fix everything. I want to fix everything that's wrong with the world, but like I don't have, like, me, just one person. I don't have the resources obviously to
But it's also
do
not
that.
your job to do that either.
But I feel like it is. I feel like
And
it
that
is, and I
and
don't
see,
know
like,
why I feel like it is.
because
Look,
of never mind.
please go ahead, Scott. No, go
No,
ahead,
go
Scott.
for it.
No, say it,
That
Scott.
tends
It's because of trauma.
Fuck yeah.
when you're like,
So
I've had this
Scott's right.
conversation with my therapist.
Trauma with a
Scott's
capital
absolutely
T.
right. And I'll chime in on this. I'm not somebody who I view as depressed, right? And so I don't want any of y'all to take this as a red flag, because I'm actually doing better than I've ever done in my whole life, right? But if I could
Yes.
die today and make the world a better place, I'd blow my brains out this second.
Right.
This fucking second, right? And it's not a matter of I don't want to be here. It's a matter of I have the desire and the drive to make a difference, and therefore I feel a deep spiritual need to do it. And
Yeah.
yes, that's a trauma response. But at the same time, I'm a deeply traumatized person. How I've navigated my life in response to my trauma has defined who I am. I didn't become a shitty person who yelled at other people, who took my problems out on them. I became somebody who would willingly suffer more to practice compassion for other people, even if they weren't willing to return it to me, just to make a fucking difference. Just not even necessarily to be an example to anybody but myself. And at the end of the day, I still feel like my entire purpose for being here is to make a world a better place, and I can't rest until that's done. And I know that the most radical thing I can do is to not give up hope, to keep fighting, right? If you're at the point where you want to give up hope, then I severely encourage you to find a passion again within it. I would willingly, gladly give everything I have to win this battle, you know? And it's not that anybody else should have to make that sacrifice, but if you're willing to make that, if you're that passionate about wanting to make the world a better place, why not fight through it? Why not go through something hard for the sake of making it better, right? Even if just the hard thing is getting through day to day without giving up hope, or like maybe you throw some change to a homeless person who really needs it. The smallest fucking act of compassion in a world so drained of it can have just the most massive of ripples. The thing is, we always think about our failures, right? I think about the people I wasn't able to save because they took their lives. You know what I don't know? How many people didn't take their lives because I was there for them? You know,
Right.
I will never have that number, but I've had people tell me that they're here because of my example, and that's not me to brag. That's just being honest.
Right.
And that's why I get up in the fucking morning, because my willingness to fight, my hope can literally give somebody else a reason to fight too. And if that's not the most powerful fucking force in the world, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. I've had incidences where I've helped people. One of the most recent things was back in 2017, I think, and I helped a friend who had some really strong ideas about things. Um, concerning relationships between races. Neither he himself was not white, and the other group of people were also not white. But unfortunately, the way capitalism and white supremacy have designed things, it pits these two people often against one another. And he was saying some things that were super critical and just sort of reactionary. And instead of like, because people were getting very upset with him, and I said, you know what, let me step in, right? Let me come in and try to talk to him, meet him where he is, right? And I was actually able to change him, to help him understand that, this isn't an us versus them situation. This
Right.
is the same people doing what they do. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is by design, you know? Um, and through talking with him and meeting him where he was, uh, he apologized and really just turned around from all that.
Mm.
And I remember I got a private message from someone from that conversation that I'm not friends with, I wasn't friends with. But he said he wanted to say thank you. He said you handled that with grace, without letting it need to devolve into a big fight. He's like, I've never seen someone so graceful in the face of all this. He said, normally I'm so used to having to scream and yell and argue and call each other names. And he said, I've never seen someone just come in and empathize with everyone across the board and just suddenly make it better. And there is something really powerful to that. There is something really strong with just that one person is something that helps me to know who I am. I didn't have to step in, and it didn't really do much in the scope of everything, but that was still one more person that now can understand the reality of that cultural battle, if you will.
Mm.
And
And no
also, like,
longer holds.
oh, sorry,
Mhm.
please continue. I thought you were done.
No, and he just no longer holds those same stereotypes.
Yeah.
And Jay, if you ever feel like you don't make a difference, dude, you already do. Do you know how many people I have had approach me and say, "Wow, that was a really good episode of the podcast," and I was like, "What? You were listening to the podcast?" Yeah, thanks. I guess we just kind of say stuff on there and hope it's smart at times. But seriously, we've actually like given people advice, and the conversations we've had here between each other have been enough to uplift other people out of situations where they felt hopeless. So like,
That makes
whether or
me
not you even
happy.
believe that you're doing it, you've already been doing it.
It's like I know that I do work, in that, like I know that I put that energy out there. I guess it's like when you just read about the world at large, it feels like you're not doing any, it feels like the work that like I'm doing is not having an impact, I guess.
Well,
But
it's
like,
because our
my
arms don't
podcast isn't
reach
gonna,
that far.
yeah, like the podcast isn't gonna stop Putin, right? So like
Mhm.
something like of that level, like I know that, but it's
We
just
could only hope and pray.
right. It's so
Eventually, he'll drop dead.
yeah, I mean it's only a matter of time, right? I mean we're all on a timer on this earth, but
You know what? We can take our podcast is approaching the point where it outlasted the Confederacy. Like this podcast has been going on longer than the Confederacy.
isn't there
So
like a
that
whole
right there.
website? Isn't there a whole website that lists things that lasted longer than the Confederacy?
Yes. It's only like 4
My
years.
indigestion.
My indigestion is
The
this
pride flag.
headache, right?
The pride flag.
All these
man.
wonderful things.
Betty White.
Right?
Oh, well,
Very true. She
goddess
last,
herself.
right?
So,
She's
like,
better than
yeah.
sliced bread. Sliced bread came after Betty White.
That is true.
But yeah, we're already making differences and we're already changing lives, right? The saying "think global, act local" is very, very repeated for a reason, right? Because
Yeah.
our arms don't reach to Ukraine, right?
Right, yeah,
But
like I
your
just
words Your words, when you pass them on to somebody else, it's like fire. When you take a candle and you light it, the match or the lighter that you pull from doesn't lose its ability to create flame. And
Mm.
that candle now has the ability to light every other candle. Your hands may never reach Ukraine, but your words, your thoughts, your feelings, and the changes you've imparted in the world almost assuredly will on some level. And no matter what, one thing I take deep solace in is that even if nothing matters in the end, nothing we have done can be undone. Every act of compassion you have done is woven into history, is there forever. Sure, the problems we have done exist as monuments too, but we can weave better things. And we can sow a compassion so deep and so wide that it can't be overcome. And that we will truly win on a long enough timeline. We just need to truly dedicate ourselves to it and understand it's a process, right? It's not going to happen through violent revolution. And as much as I talk about majorities of power and state-sponsored violence, I do that so people understand the situation we're in right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gradual change, statistically, is most likely going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, then we get what I call when the other shoe drops,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
When you
absolutely.
create such a vacuum that the only way for something to proceed is for something that's unfortunate, like violence. And it's
Yeah.
just like water building up in a dam too much. You can keep building the biggest dam you want. It will never be enough to hold that water back indefinitely forever. And
Mm-hmm.
anything works like that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. This was a heavy episode, but I guess
It's almost always a heavy episode. I think people have learned not to tune into the podcast unless they're ready for accidental, immediate heaviness.
right,
And that's kind of our brand, you know?
kind of, yeah.
I mean, I feel like all of us are kind of the type of people who are kind of like allergic to small talk, like your
Oh,
levels of neurodiversity and trauma.
yeah.
We're all kind of like, let's talk about the weather. That makes me
No, we're going to talk about the
uncomfortable.
fall of capitalism and
Tell me
patriarchy
about
and
capitalism and the demons you conjured, like, and what kind of deep shadow work did they put you through?
Right, it's like I almost like
baby.
I always find myself in this like weird like I'm too normal, quote unquote, for the weirdos, and I'm too weird for the normies. And so like I just feel like I don't know where I belong.
Right here.
You belong exactly where you are because
Exactly.
you're not supposed to exist as an axiom. You're supposed to exist as yourself.
Mm. Mm.
That's like what I was talking about with Gwillem. We were talking about aliens and what they might potentially be like, right? And if you examine humans as a range of emotions, almost assuredly, a lot of them are going to be similar to us in that there's good and bad among them, and they have their benefits and flaws. Also, statistically, there are going to be those species that are more warlike and aggressive than us, and
Yeah.
those species that exist by cooperation and look at us and go, holy fuck, how could you possibly exist that way, right?
Mhm.
But as long as you're not doing unnecessary harm and you're living your life the way you want to, fuck, that's your purpose for being here. The universe exists to make patterns of everything, not infinitely replicating code, right?
Mm.
It's not the same fucking flower printed 10 million trillion times. It's 10 million trillion variations of flowers planted a few times, and the intermingling gives rise to new ones. So if you're not as weird as the weird kids and you're not as normal as the normal people, great. It means you're doing you and you're filling a spot that may be so unfilled that people don't get to see that representation often enough without seeing it through you.
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. I really haven't thought about it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Words of wisdom.
Oh.
I try to be smart. For a person who didn't go to anything post high school and often gets facts wrong out of books that she's read
Fuck
and gets corrected
college.
by people all the
College is
time.
bullshit.
That's
You are
everyone. It's okay.
Sophia. If you would like, no one would ever know. that you were not
But-
college educated.
Yeah,
Actually,
college
that's the funny
doesn't
thing. People have told me, well, you and your fucking ivory tower over there, and I've said to them, you realize I only have a high school education, right? And they'll tell
Mhm.
me that I'm lying to them because I
Right.
speak like I'm educated, simply because I took the time and effort to better myself,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm no expert in anything, and practically anything I say can be overturned by somebody who is an expert in that respective field, right? It's like I was saying to y'all before the call. The benefits of talking with an actual archaeologist is all the dumb harebrained theories that you pull off the top of your head that might make sense on a cursory level just won't stand up to expert scrutiny, right? So like, I'm not an expert in anything, and I'd like to really kind of be forward about that, right? I've been wrong on the podcast about things in the past, and I will be wrong on the podcast about things in the future, right? So I feel like I always just want to couch it like that, because I feel like when somebody wants to try and present themselves like an expert, that's when shit goes off the rails, right?
Right, that's the
'Cause an
thing that I
expert-
never wanted to do in the occult community or with this podcast or in the queer community. Is like, at first I kind of thought maybe I wanted to establish myself as an authority, right? Like, I'm saying this and you should listen to me because, you know, my thoughts are good and blah, blah, blah. But then I realized I was like, no, I really just want to be a person just presenting my take or our take or different takes on whatever the case is. And I think that's just like something I really want to drive home is like, I really do not want to be anyone of a position of authority, but I do like being a person that is sort of like a facilitator of conversation, a facilitator of community and like togetherness and stuff like that, to where like I like to be the, oh yeah, like I said, like the facilitator, the person that makes it all happen. Like, yeah, we can get the meeting together, but like I don't want to like be like, well, I'm not trying to be a leader, I guess, is like the thing is like I'm not trying to get anyone to follow me. I just want everyone to listen to each other.
A mediator.
Yeah. The great media.
Makes
great
sense.
remediation.
May the great remediation begin now. The remediation of the human existence as it is.
The re-understanding of the human condition, and may we all radically give ourselves into the changes that will allow this world to be what it truly can.
Blessed be.
No.
Amen. Wait,
Blessed
what?
fucking be. It's blessed fucking be.
Blessed fucking be. So mote it fucking be. I will say, like,
Oh
on
my
that,
god! Holy shit! That's our first. We gotta make that shirt. Blessed fucking be.
blessed fucking be. I can make that shirt, and yeah, I can do it.
Please.
I can make it.
It's gonna be your catchphrase. Blessed fucking be.
Right. So, yeah. Speaking of shirts, I guess I'll do a little plug. We're at like an hour and a half, so we should probably wrap this up in a couple minutes. But yeah, the shop is live. The merch works. Jim was our first guinea pig / sale. Our friend Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for getting a hat and a mug. So it works. So I can only it's only for the U.S. currently, just because international shipping prices are a lot. But hopefully in the future, as we get more sales, we can expand into at least Canada. I'm going to hope.
We can cajole somebody in Canada to hold a small warehouse worth of equipment or items and just ship them out as needed.
Yeah, so we'll get Sophia hooked up with a small
Hey,
warehouse,
I'm too busy. I'm making movies.
She needs
I'm
an
a film
assistant.
bitch.
we'll hire Sophia
I'm
an
a film
assistant
girl.
with all of the money that we have just sitting around. All the Monopoly
from
money.
our Patreon that's never had a subscriber aside from
Well, we
Tom.
actually have a Ko-fi, so we don't have a Patreon.
Oh. I was gonna say Darian was the only one who actually subscribed
Yeah,
to our
to
Patreon.
the
account.
Hey now, I subscribe.
Yes, you did subscribe to the
Oh,
Patreon.
okay, Darian and Rue. Props
Yes.
to you too.
But that money was used, like we used that money to pay for like our like the music that Ahava did for us, our music redoing. But
Back in the early days.
it was very helpful, so I do appreciate any contribution. But yeah, we do have a Ko-fi page too. We have all that shit. Click all of our links. Support us if you'd like, if you can. But yeah, there's some cool merch. It is not printed by me. It is printed by a print-on-demand service. So It comes to
Printify.
you in the condition that it comes. If it's shit, let me know, and we won't use that service. But Jim said his mug and his hat turned out pretty good, so it's a pretty decent service. And I've ordered a couple products too, just to test and see how they looked out, and looks pretty good. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and blessed fucking B shirts will be in the shop by the end of the year.
yeah, I really should work on the blessed fucking bee shirts because I feel like we fucking need those.
Make sure you cut the G off of fucking, so it's just
Oh
fucking
yeah,
with an
blessed
apostrophe at the end.
fucking bee.
Yeah.
Nice.
Gotta have some asterisks.
But
in
like
there
it's like
still.
blessed
have, like,
fucking and then
bold.
like a picture of a bee.
No, here's actually my idea. You have like the holy hands, kind of like you see Jesus doing, but in one hand there's like a vape pen or a joint, and in the other hand there's like fucking occult symbols all over it, and it's like holding them up. Blessed fucking bee is like the joint for the vape pens, like fucking going off.
Or just
I
like a
like
picture of a
it.
bee, the blessed fucking bee.
That could be another one too. We could have two of them. You could have blessed fucking bee and the blessed fucking bee,
And
he's,
the
like,
blessed fucking bee.
and he's like sitting there in a lawn chair with like sunglasses and a pope hat on with a
Right.
cigarette hanging out of his mouth, fucking man spreading, you know?
Somebody draw it.
Stop.
I will pay you for the design.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think we had a good episode. I was very almost like I almost was like I don't even want to fucking record because I was just so exhausted and
Depresso?
tired and yeah, depresso. I have two moods, depresso and espresso. So depresso is when I'm down, and espresso is when I'm trying to get shit done. So espresso, depresso.
Espresso.
But I went from depresso
we
to
gotta get a cup
espresso.
of espresso.
Yes, but I'm very happy that I went from depresso to espresso.
Okay, that's gonna be our third shirt. Espresso to espresso.
Depresso to espresso. It's why I want a coffee shop. Coffee makes everyone happy. Anyway,
Damn
You know what we
straight.
call it? Which is be roasting.
witches be roasting. Oh, it's gonna start our own coffee line. Watch out, Death Wish Coffee. I'm coming for
Oh
you.
god.
I'm coming for you.
You know, statistically speaking, small batch roasters who do high quality jobs are incredibly successful. 'Cause
Yeah, the
craft
coffee game
is
is-
something people are willing to pay for.
Oh yeah, the coffee game is like exploding right now. Trying to make some money if you got a way to make good coffee.
So, just
Mhm.
as somebody who used to work in the coffee industry,
Mm.
don't invest in coffee because if we don't get a handle on climate change, coffee's going to be extinct in 50 years.
Yes,
Sorry.
also save the bees. I feel like the bees have something to do with coffee too, probably. So save the bees.
It's actually more about the fact that coffee beans grow at a very specific temperature and a very specific altitude. And if you environmentally fuck things, it doesn't grow the same way it does, right?
And then
Like
you
if you've
don't have your
heard
fancy
Arabica
coffee.
versus yeah, so if you've heard Arabica versus Robusto are a type of beans that people don't even often like to use, and almost everything you drink is Arabica because it's reasons. I forget. It's been like 10 years since I worked in a coffee warehouse. But yeah, point being that shit is fragile and it doesn't grow easy. And if you don't stop climate change, you're going to lose your favorite cup of joe and you will be uncaffeinated while you die. Just saying.
That sounds incredibly unpleasant, and I do not wish that to happen.
Can you imagine experiencing the day after tomorrow with no coffee?
I
I
That
feel
was
like that's the
in-
only way to experience it. It's like the purest day after tomorrow.
It really
Oh,
is.
how'd you go? Oh, I was drinking coffee and I was a little.
It was in a
weird.
scene
No.
in The Last of Us, actually. Like he's like in the truck and like he's drinking, I guess, like 20-year-old coffee at this point, you know, just like some 20-year-old coffee made from beans or whatever. And he's like drinking it and like she tries it, she's like hates it. She's like, why do you drink this? He's like, you have no idea, or whatever the fuck he says. He's just like, yeah, it's good coffee.
Oh, on The Last of Us?
Yeah, there's like some
so
scene, something with
actually-
coffee. It was funny.
Okay, so as somebody who knows their coffee a lot, he's not even brewing it with a paper filter. He's not even brewing it with the controlled heat source. And he's brewing coffee that's been sitting for about
20
2
years.
fucking
Yeah.
decades after roasting.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
God.
but the coffee that Ellie drinks is probably toxic to anybody who didn't exist pre-fucking.
Probably. Oh yeah, I'm like
zombie
that
outbreak.
shit probably tastes like gasoline or some shit like that. It probably
He's
tastes awful.
drinking that because he knows it's his only source of caffeine he can get, and he's willing to take the benefits for the pain of drinking 20-year-old fucking cowboy coffee. He didn't even filter out the grounds.
Nope.
Doesnh matter.
Anyways,
Yes. On that note,
New
go
episode tonight
go
at
make a
9.
cup of coffee if you enjoy coffee. Go make a cup of coffee. Think about us.
Or tea if you're like me.
Or tea. Yes.
Yes.
Go make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Always.
Enjoy that.
and I was not lying. New episode of The Last of Us tonight at 9 o'clock.
Mm. Yeah, I usually
Have to
watch it
catch
like after it.
No spoilers, but how much were you emotionally damaged after episode 5?
Oh, was that the one with the couple, the gay couple? Is that what we're talking about?
No,
Or was that
that's
episode
episode
3? We didn't watch.
We actually haven't
5.
watched 5.
Yeah, we watched
Okay,
up to 4.
Scott, how emotionally damaged were you from episode 5?
I'll be real with you. I haven't actually been able to watch the show. I just watched like certain
Okay.
parts. I started episode 1 and I got devastated. And then everyone's like, "Did you see how they changed the story? It was so good in episode 3." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "I gotta see it. It's gay, so of course I gotta watch." And then I was like, crying a lot. And then I was like, "This show's really heavy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait till I have more spoons."
When you're ready to process your trauma, that show, without spoilers, the entire show is about loss and what we do to get through it and what it does to a person, right? And when you've gone through loss and you regain your sense of hope and self, what you'd be willing to do to keep it, right? So I don't want to spoil anything
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of my favorite video games, but it's a more human series than I've seen out of anything else.
I would
And
yeah, I would agree with that.
it is supposed to hurt to watch because people who've watched the show have lost lovers or family or siblings or children, you know? Those are all things that happen on the show,
Yeah.
right? It does not pull away from the harsh reality of what it's like living in a world that
It's
has
fucked.
lost all control. Yeah. And ultimately, a lot of the stuff that happens in that show is still stuff that happens in our world, you know? Queer couples have to struggle to protect themselves from people who would come from the outside just to kill them and take what they have, you know? And we may not have to set literal fucking traps and bombs for them, but metaphorically we sure as fuck do.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Absolutely.
And
Definitely.
like, I encourage y'all to watch the show when you have somebody you can hold on to and cry with after. Cause
Yeah, good to have a friend or something, someone close, someone that you're close with. Yeah.
it's only gonna get harder. The season finale will get even harder, and everybody will think that they can't up the ante, and then they're gonna see what happens at the episode 1 of season 2, and nobody's gonna be ready for any of it. And you will understand more about yourself and how you grieve as a result. But Jesus fuck, please be ready for it, y'all. It is not going to be a light ride.
Strap
and it's
in.
like the most popular show on television right now, pretty much from what I'm seeing. I haven't like read statistics, but like
It's pretty
the
popular.
discourse of The Last of Us is going to be all people are going to be talking about in approximately 4 weeks, right? Because today we get episode 6, next week is episode 7, then it's 8 and 9. Okay, so 3 weeks from now, it's, unless there's a delay, it's the season finale, right? And with how the season finale is going to go, I'm willing to bet that they're doing an 1.5 to 2 hour long episode.
Yeah, they're like movie length episodes, like some of them.
Yes, you can't approach what happens in the last episode without giving it that much time, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of information to convey.
In about 3 weeks, I expect everybody to be processing the end of the show, and you won't be able to really hide from the spoilers. So that's why I'm encouraging people to keep up with it, because like,
yeah, it gets hard.
If you think people lost their goddamn mind about the Game of Thrones twists and just posted it online recklessly, wait the fuck until you see what happens next.
Hold on, everybody.
Hold
It's
on
about
to
to
your
get
hands,
real.
Lord.
This show's about to get real.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy watching The Last of Us, I guess, if that you can really use the word enjoy. More like take care of yourself while watching The Last of Us. Have a cup of
Yeah.
coffee or tea and hug somebody or hug your cat. Whatever works for you.
Talk to your therapist.
Or talk to your therapist. Watch it with your therapist. I don't know.
Actually, there's a really good channel I always want to plug. It's called Georgia Dow. I'm sure Scott knows about it. She's a therapist who watches really heavy stuff like this
Yeah.
and then comments on people's behavior and like the realism to how people are acting in a situation and like the real psychology and like makeup behind what's happening with those events. It's really good. If you need to process what you just watched on the Last of Us episodes, please look up Georgia Dow and watch Therapist Reacts to The Last of Us. It will definitely soften the blow to some degree. So yeah.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite like games we played in Abnormal Psych was like picking apart like shows that represent mental illness and stuff or like traumatic experiences. And like one of the things we did was like, is it a good display of this particular thing? You know, and it was really fun. Sorry, yeah.
No, all good.
But I
Do
yeah, I
not
know what you're talking about.
apologize. You have nothing to
Yes.
apologize for.
Well,
But
I think it was great talking to everybody here today. I don't want to go too much longer. We're at like an hour 45.
yeah, I'm hungry. I haven't really eaten anything.
Yeah, I also have to pee, so there's also that. But I guess we'll see everyone next week. I don't
Yes.
think there's anything barring us next week. But yeah. So we will see everyone next week. Thank you all
Bye,
for tuning
everyone.
in. Bye everyone.
Please.